It's a great opportunity to share with you my views about Israel, about the region, about what Israel is, what is the nature of the State of Israel, what does it mean to be a Jewish democratic state. But let's speak at first about the region, the tough neighborhood in which Israel exists. And when we're looking from a bird eye point of view, we see this is really a tough neighborhood. I mean, we have some states and organizations that represent extreme religious ideology, extreme Islamist groups. We have Iran as a state, we have Hezbollah in Lebanon, we have Hamas in the Palestinian Authority. All of them represent religious ideology that would never accept Israel as such because Israel represents the infidel. And not only Israel, but also other Arab and Muslim states that for them they are too moderate, so they cannot recognize them, and therefore they want to create a big caliphate here, something that would represent their ideology. Therefore, what we represent, basically the values that we believe in, you believe in, the values of democracy, the values of equal rights, this is something that they would never accept. And Israel is just part of what they see as unacceptable in the region. The good news is that we have other states here. And even though we have an ongoing conflict that I would refer to later with the Arabs in the region, other Arab and Muslim states like the Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Egypt, Jordan, all of them understand that Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas is their threat, and therefore there are chances for Israel to change our strategic allies and alliances and to work with this group against these extremists, these terrorists, including Daesh, Al-Qaeda, all those. But we have another conflict which is connected directly to us, and this is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That this is a conflict in this tiny, tiny place between Jordan River, Mediterranean Sea, and I would like to refer to this at first. And I truly believe that as a state, it's not enough to be united because we have enemies. And I just mentioned and started this early morning session talking about these enemies. But it is not as important to be united for something, for a vision. So a few words about the state of Israel and about the conflict. My parents came to Israel as children in 1925, before the Holocaust, before the state of Israel was established. And my mother lived in Haifa, my father in Tel Aviv. And while they came to Israel, there was a British mandate on Israel. It was part of the colonialism phase of the world, when Great Britain has a mandate on the state of Israel and basically controlled this place. It was not a state yet. So both my parents decided to join the underground, fighting for the establishment of a Jewish state against the British army. It was not against the Muslims or against the Arabs who lived here as well, but it was against the British army. Both of them were freedom fighters, not terrorists. They fought the British army. They didn't attack civilians. And basically they met while robbing a British money train at night. They wanted to get the money and to buy weapons for the underground. Later on, both of them were arrested by the British. My father was arrested and served his time in Accra prison until the organization bombed the prison and they all escaped. And my mother was imprisoned in another prison, and she escaped in another unimaginable way when she asked somebody to inject her milk. This created symptom of illness. They took her to a hospital, and while the doctors, before the operation, washed their hands, she jumped from the second floor and escaped. Yes, I know that it sounds like a fairy tale. Trust me, I didn't believe my mother when she told me these stories while trying, to convince me to eat something. But later on, I met the guy who injected her the milk, and later I met an old lady who told me, listen, I'm the one that one day I heard somebody knocking on my door, and I saw your mother with, you know, the hospital robe, escaping from the British Army. So basically, this was their idea, and both of them got married the same day the State of Israel was established. They are the first couple who got married in the State of Israel. Basically, the first and only couple who could get married the same day, because according to the Jewish tradition, you cannot get married in certain days. This was one of the days. But my grandmother decided to convince the rabbi of Tel Aviv to set the marriage, saying that this is a celebration, and therefore she wanted her son to get married as well. So basically something which is very important to understand, because there is a false perception that when the State of Israel was established, this created the conflict between Israel and Muslims or Israelis and Palestinians in the land of Israel. This is not true. Because before the State of Israel was established, the United Nations decided to give an answer to an ongoing conflict that was here between Muslims and Jews, between Arabs and Jews. And the idea was a very reasonable and just solution. The whole idea was to say, okay, we have a conflict here between two different peoples. So let's have two states for two peoples. One would be a Jewish state, and the other would be an Arab state. And this is the decision, Resolution 181 of the United Nations. It was voted for in 1947. And the Jewish community who lived here and the Jewish leadership decided that maybe this is not their dream, because their dream was to have a Jewish state on the entire ancient land of Israel. And for us, the ancient land of Israel includes all the territory between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea. We have historical rights on all these places. But then they needed to choose between the entire land of Israel or having a Jewish state on part of the land of Israel. Their goal was to create a state. And therefore they accepted the idea of basically two states that the United Nations decided. But unfortunately, the Arabs didn't accept it, and the same day that the State of Israel was established, we started the first war on the existence of the State of Israel. And since then, basically, we are having, in different ways, different wars from those that would not accept our existence. And I believe that there are chances, and we need to achieve peace with the Palestinians in accordance based on the same principles, which is a just solution for all of us. Two states for two peoples. But when the State of Israel was established, it was not only a Jewish state. The Scroll of Independence that was written and read the same day said that this is the place in which the Jewish people has the right of, express their right for self-determination in a state of our own. This is one part of the Scroll of Independence. And the other saying that in our state we will have equal rights to all its citizens without discrimination. So the meaning is that Israel is a Jewish democratic state. And other parts of the scroll calling for peace between us and the Arabs, and this is basically the idea. So even though Israel doesn't have, unfortunately, a constitution, what is written in the Scroll of Independence is basically the values of the State of Israel, the constitutional values of the State of Israel, meaning a Jewish state, but also a democracy with equal rights to all its citizens, something which is very important for us to understand, because we have here in the State of Israel 20% of Israeli citizens that are not Jews, 20% of Israeli Muslims, of Israeli Arabs, of Israeli Palestinians, and therefore it's very important for me to keep the values of Israel living in harmony and not in contradiction. In order to keep these values, we need to have, by fact, a Jewish majority, because otherwise we're going to have a clash between being a Jewish state and a democracy, because if we don't have a Jewish majority, democracy also means it's a matter of values and it's a matter of rights, of civil rights, but it's also a matter of majority. And therefore, when I'm looking again from a bird eye, but just on this place between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea, it is clear to me that the idea of two states for two peoples represent the interest of Israel. Now, what happened is that in 1967, I'm that old, but as a child, I remember this war. And the days before this war, Israel was really tiny, and all over we had Arab states that couldn't accept the right of Israel to exist. That included Egypt and Jordan and Syria. And we felt that if they would attack Israel, it would be a doomsday. It would be the end of the state of Israel. This is really the way we felt. And I didn't live on the border. I live in Tel Aviv. I was born in Tel Aviv. I live in Tel Aviv. And when we succeeded not only to stop them, but to have a great victory, this is the 6 Days War, it was something that was not only about the victory, it was not only about saving our lives. It was also when we came to what some calls the West Bank, some calls Judea and Samaria. For us, it was places that were part of our history, part of our Bible. I still remember my first visit to the Western Wall, my first visit to Tomb of Rachel, to the Tomb of the Patriarch. It was really something that was not a colonialist idea, but we were under threat, we succeeded, we have this great victory, we can live happily ever after between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea with all the Palestinians that lived in these territories. And therefore, part of what happened was this great feeling of, we are strong enough, they couldn't beat us, and we have now these new territories that are part of our history, and Israel is strong, and we can live without making decisions, and this was a huge mistake. Because you cannot hold these territories without deciding what are you doing with them as a state, and what's going to happen to all these people that are living there. And now I'm talking about the Palestinians. Are there going to be Israeli citizens? This is one idea. By the way, Menachem Begin, who was the prime minister representing what is called now Likud, or right-wing in Israel, wanted to give them equal rights. To have one state with equal rights to all. But unfortunately, this threatens, in a way, the majority of Jews within the state of Israel, because we are talking about millions of Palestinians that are living there. More than that, since the Palestinians themselves said, okay, we understand that you created your state, but we as a national movement didn't succeed in creating our own state. And therefore, and this is in a way, it's an ironic and cynical way history sometimes works. Because in 1947, we accepted the idea of two states. They didn't. And then when they said, okay, we want to create our own state, for some of us Israelis, it was, it's too late. You can. And later on, it took us many years until Oslo Agreement was signed, saying basically that we need to move forward toward a kind of separation or two states or something that would represent the rights of both our peoples to self-determination in a state of their own. And basically, I believe that this is the right thing to do. Now, unfortunately, what happened during all these years is that from the Israeli side, part of the idea of Greater Israel, of one state, of living together, was to build settlements in the places that we are keeping since 1967. It's not against somebody, but it was part of this vision that we can have one state. settlements doesn't serve Israel's security needs. It's part of this vision. And I believe that Israel should change, or had changed already, its vision from one, well, it's not a big state, even if we have the territories as part of Israel, it's really tiny. But I believe that the right idea is really to have two states for two peoples, and therefore this is the reason for me to join politics. And since day one in politics, I negotiated with the Palestinians, trying to achieve peace with them based on two states for two peoples. And unfortunately, we didn't achieve peace. I believe that still this is the right thing to do. And sometimes while negotiating, you would find this when you would negotiate in the future for your own businesses or others. Sometimes things that looks easier are not that easy, because we are talking about different narratives of different peoples. What we call the land of Israel, they call Palestine. When we are talking about Jerusalem, and for me, I mean, I was born in Tel Aviv, but my umbilical cord, it runs from basically from Temple Mount and Western Wall, and for them, this is a holy place for Islam. And therefore, in the negotiations, sometimes it's like magnets. At first, it goes quite easy, and then in the end, we have very narrow gaps, but very deep, emotional. And I believe that the leadership, and the only leaders that would make an agreement in the end, would be those understanding that the price of not having an agreement to their people is higher than the political price that they would pay if they would sign an agreement. And maybe I undermine something because it's not only a political price. Prime Minister Rabin paid with his life. He was assassinated, he was murdered because he signed the Oslo Accord, the Oslo Agreement, signed peace treaty. So in this region, it's not only about, some political price that you are paying. Sometimes it's even more dramatic than that. And while talking about the need to achieve peace with the Palestinians, we are also facing internal trends in Israel. And frankly, these trends are not only trends that we face in Israel. This is global now. It goes global now. And these are trends that are changing the nature of democracies all over the world. We see more and more populism, we see more and more extremism, we see more and more xenophobia. We see those that are acting against foreigners, that are creating hatred, that would not accept the others. And the world is changing. And we see this changing in some places in Europe, when you see populistic leaders that are exploiting and abusing fear to get political support. And we see also some changes when it comes to the United States. Let's speak openly here. And also we see states, countries that are very important these days, but they are not real democracies. I mean, look at Russia and China. And it looks legitimate because they are strong, they have power. And therefore, Israel is just one of the states that is changing also from the inside. And I believe that part of my responsibility as an Israeli leader is to stop these trends. To stop those that are trying to make Israel, how would I say, more Jewish, less democratic, or to change the nature of democracy. When I hear voices saying, what does it mean, democracy? Democracy is that the majority rules. I say, no, this is not. This is also one side of democracy. Democracy means also rights for the citizen. And one of the problems here is that since this is really a tough neighborhood, and while we are facing terror attacks, sometimes you have the perception and the images that to be strong, or the meaning of being strong, is also, to put aside all this democratic stuff. That it's a matter of weakness. And part of my responsibility is to act against terror whilst keeping the values of the State of Israel. And there is one thing that really frustrates me. And this is that when it comes to the international community, sometimes you hear when Israel is under attack from terrorist organizations like Hamas. You've been here this week, so you know what happened in the south part of Israel. So here we have Hamas as a terrorist organization that is acting against Israel not because he wants to establish a Palestinian state. And terror is not legitimate anyway. Terror is terror. But they are fighting against the State of Israel because according to their charter, they cannot accept, it's a religious group, they cannot accept the right of Israel to exist as such. So they are targeting us. Israel left Gaza Strip. We dismantled all the settlements. We pulled out our forces. We put the border or the fence exactly on the 67 line. We are not there. We left. We don't want to come back. We wish them happy, good life. Not Hamas, the people in Gaza. But Hamas took over. And when Hamas took over Gaza, basically, it takes the population, the civilians who live in Gaza, as hostage. And they're abusing them, calling them to run on the fence, to try to infiltrate into Israel. In military actions, they are really using their own people as human shields. So on the one hand, like this week, we have terrorist organizations that are targeting kindergartens. While in Israel, our army is acting like any army in a democratic state in accordance to the international law. And this is also according to our values. We are trying to avoid civil casualties. We are targeting terror, trying to avoid civil casualties, but unfortunately, these things happen in a war or in a military operation. But when an Israeli soldier is doing something, or when a Palestinian civilian is being killed, we are having our own independent inquiries asking why this is happening. And if a soldier is acting against the Israeli law or the international law, we put charges against him. So here you have Hamas or Jihad Islamic, Islamic Jihad, they target the kindergarten, while we are having inquiries when an Israeli soldier, unfortunately, by mistake, killed a Palestinian civilian. They are having inquiries when they miss the kindergarten. And this frustrates it not only because of what we are facing, because I cannot accept a comparison between a terrorist organization and the Israeli soldier, or any soldier of a democratic state. I'm a lawyer by profession. I was also Minister of Justice. There is no comparison between somebody who killed somebody by mistake, for example, in a car accident, or a murderer. I mean, the loss of life are awful. It's awful for any family, Palestinian family or Israeli family. I would not compare the grief, it's the same. But I would not accept those saying, we have casualties both sides, you should stop. I wish we could. I wish we could stop. I wish Gaza turned into peaceful, wonderful place to live in, to a new Singapore. But as long as they are being controlled by Hamas, it's quite difficult to change completely the situation in Gaza, even though Israel is willing to do everything, or almost everything, as long as it would not affect our security needs. But talking about democracy and the fact that terrorist organizations are abusing the democracies. I mean, Hamas was elected. Hezbollah in Lebanon was elected. Both of them are designated terrorist organizations. So we need to do something else. And maybe I will finish with this, and then if you want to ask questions. I was speaking about democracy, and I said that democracy is not just majority rules, and it's not just a matter of voting. It's a matter of values. So how come terrorist organization that would not accept never the ideas of democracy, the values of democracy, rules of law, the monopoly of the use of forces by the government, not by the hands of armed militias or terrorist organizations, how can they participate in elections? In Israel, our Supreme Court denied the right of a racist party to participate in election because being racist, basically, is against the nature of democracy. So you cannot have power through abusing a system that you would not accept. I mean, those that are supervising the elections on the Palestinian side are saying that the elections were free and fair. Free? When one of the parties is an armed militia? Can you really come and vote without fear? So this is something that I believe that the world should say, and this can be the role of the United States, saying, friends, bullet or ballot? You need to choose. As long as you are an armed militia supporting terror, you cannot participate in elections. If you want to be part of the political system, fine. We would embrace you if you would do it, as long as you would renounce violence and terrorism and respect the basics of democracy. And I believe that since, as I said, this is a neighborhood in which you have both, we have Israel as a democracy, other states that are not democracies, the terrorist organization, rogue states. This is a mess. So I believe that there is an opportunity now to have some basic parameters of behaviors that the world would put on the table. It can be a United Nations resolution, Security Council resolution, saying if you want to be part of the international community. If you don't, we would fight. But if you want to be part of the international community, you should accept certain rules. And this can change the situation here in the region and hopefully would create a better future for young generation, for your generation here in Israel. Thank you.